For more now on efforts to combat poverty in Mexico and across Latin America, we welcome Laura Carlsen. She's the director of the Mexico City-based Americas program at the Center for International Policy. Laura, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
There's just been a report which has been published here in Washington from the Center for Economic Policy and Research, which says that 20 years after NAFTA, Mexico still lags well behind other nations in poverty and unemployment. What's gone wrong?
Well, what's happened with Mexico is really a result of the free trade model. And it's true that it's significantly behind other areas, which is really contrary to a lot of the rhetoric that we're hearing, especially now that the three North American presidents are getting together. But what's happened is that by orienting the economy toward the United States economy, which has been going through a difficult period, as we know, with the multiple crises, those crises affect Mexico in a profound way because so much of its trade and commerce and investment is oriented toward the United States, like over 70%. This gives it sort of no buffer. This has been a serious problem for Mexico. It also has generated very little growth. The growth is about the half of what it's been for the rest of America, Latin America. So this has meant that there hasn't been the job creation and the other types of things. Also competing with U.S. exports, particularly agricultural exports, that are heavily subsidized in the U.S., has had a major impact on the Mexican countryside.
Yeah, that would have had an effect on Mexican unemployment as well, with the United States, as you point out, subsidizing, say, corn farmers. That effectively wiped out Mexican corn farmers, didn't it?
That's exactly one of the major problems that we've seen. And one of the big reasons, too, why we've seen under the last 2 decades of NAFTA, the free trade agreement, a huge increase in immigration to the United States. What happened is these cheap imports came in from the United States, and these small-scale farmers in especially southern Mexico and other parts of Mexico as well were unable to compete. And there was really no backup plan for them. There were no more government support programs. They were eliminated in the run-up to NAFTA and then under NAFTA. And they were presumably going to get jobs in the industrial sector. But that didn't pan out either. And so there were insufficient jobs, and some 3 million small farmers were displaced from their land with very few other options.
Right. Now, the government in Mexico is making much of the fact that it is trying to change the situation. What exactly is the government doing to alleviate poverty?
Well, unfortunately, all we've seen so far, and it's what we're going to see now with the announcements that come out from the North American leaders, is more of the same. And it's highly unlikely, after 2 decades, with the lessons we've learned, that more of the same is going to alleviate poverty in Mexico. In fact, under NAFTA, we have 14 million more people living in poverty in absolute numbers. The percentage rate is about the same. That means zero progress in poverty reduction under this model that was supposed to be a development model for Mexico as the economy was able to export more and create more jobs. So this is going to be a major problem. It already is a major problem, and the kinds of programs that Peña Nieto is coming up with are not showing a recognition that these policies in the past have failed.
And how does Mexico's education system play into this country's, what role does it play in its poverty rate?
Well, there's certainly a need to fix the education system to make it better. But I think it's important to take into account, too, that there have been advances. There are more people getting an education, going into higher education, and those people are coming out of school without being able to find jobs. You find taxi drivers in the United States who've been forced to migrate, who have college degrees and sometimes even higher education degrees. And yet the job situation is just not there. It's true that Mexico has to take a closer look at how to get the education system to mesh together with the labor market. But there also has to be a general funding of education, and that's the government's responsibility, and that just hasn't happened. When you compare it to other countries in the region, the percentage of the national budget that's going to education, where teachers are poorly paid, where there are classrooms, again, especially in the rural area, that don't have the basic necessities for teaching, is way too low.
Okay, Laura, thanks for joining us. Laura Carlsen there from Mexico City.